Okay, so yesterday we learned two sugyas. We learned first the new Mishnah that the Gemara tells us, is telling us that the takana of Farinechtam isn't just a suggestion, it's ma'akev. And then we got into analyzing the chiddush of each case. Reb Chisda said it's a loizu afsu. Each case doesn't necessarily have a chiddush. It's a build-up from the smaller chiddush to the bigger chiddush. And we had three shittas about different levels of chumash that there might or might not exist. Reb Chisda held that if one aid says the Fani Nechtam and two aidim come along and say that they are being mekayim the chasima, the halacha is it's possible because it's oy kuloi b'kiyim haget, oy kuloi b'tekanas chachamim. So I'm sorry if there's one aid that if the shliach says the Fani Nechtam on one chasima and you have two aidim on the other chasima, Rav Chisda says that would still be possible because either you go with the Kanas Chachamim, so the whole get has to be validated through the shliach, or else the whole get requires normal kiyum, which means you would need two eidim on both chasimas. Thank you very much. So that was the shita of Rav Chisda, which of course Rava didn't like because it's very, very machmir. Because where do you ever find that if one person would say it, it would be kosher? If the shliach would have said b'fani nechtam on the second signature, it would have been kosher. And now that there's two eidim, it should be worse. How could two eidim be worse? So therefore, Rava says that's too radical of a chumrah. Rava says a different chumrah. So in that case, if there were two eidim on the second chasima, Dr. Rava, that would be a fine get. Where is there a problem? That's if the two eidim on the second chasima included the shliach himself. And then Rava said there should be a gzeira because now 3/4 of the weight of the get rests on the shoulders of the shliach. That's not acceptable. Similar to in the case of mominus, where you have two eidim that are mekayim one chasima, and the other chasima is actually the chasima of one of the eidim themselves. So kum techois, this star is 3/4 supported by one aid. That's not acceptable. So the Gemara asks, Maskav lo Rabashi, mi kamidi yilimasik ilaiu lechula debura kosher. If he would have said the funny necklace and everything would be kosher, hashadiga chad ba'dei puzzle just because there's somebody else with him it's puzzle. So it's a beautiful kasha. He was reminding us. He was trying to bring it out. And Rav Ashi came up with a third chiddush, and he says afilu oimer anihu eid sheni. Even though he is the aid himself, that's what would be possible. Once again, because aikuloi became a get, aikuloi be'etekanas v'cham. So that was the first shtickle Gemara we had, and then of course the Gemara went off on a tangent, which we're in the middle of right now, and that is since we're talking about piecing together two different things, like a kiyum through chasima, a kiyum through the shliach, saying b'fani nechtam, and we're coupling it up with a kiyum of edim. So we discuss other types of patchwork. So the first thing that the Gemara discussed was if you want to make a Rosh Hashanah, you normally need a barrier of 10. Well, what if you dug out 5? You did underpinning, you dug out 5, and then you made a barrier of 5. So will the depth of 5 plus the barrier of 5 combine? Rav Chisda said not, but the Gemara said we paskin mitzdarfen. Then we had a question that we're in the middle of. Ilfa, the famous Ilfa, who's the master Talmid Chacham, the guy who went out to work, but he claimed that he was a bigger Talmid Chacham than Rabbi Yochanan, and he said there's no Mishnah in Shas that Rebbe said that he doesn't know about. He asked, what happens if your hands are half tar, half tummy? The Gemara probed, what does it mean half tar, half tummy? So the Gemara ended up saying is that you washed half your hand, and it was still a little moist, and then you washed the other half of your hand. Would that be good? Would that be a good Netilas Yadayim? And the Gemara asks, of course not, because we know if it's just a little moist, it doesn't have any impact, because we learned that hanitzoik v'katafris umashke tefeach einay chibur. So that's where we're up to right now, which we'll start from today. Nitzuk means if you're pouring from one keli into another keli, and the upper keli is tahar, and the bottom keli is tameh, but the water flowing from one keli to the next sort of connects them. Is that called combining them? The halacha is it's not. It will not be metama, the upper keli, because the fact that there's water flowing in between them does not constitute a connection, a chibur. Katapris is if you have a slope and you have water on the upper end of the slope and water to the bottom end of the slope, and there's water running in between them, that would not connect them either. And Rashi says that would be, for instance, a mikveh. Imagine if you had, we know you need 40 saw to have a mikveh. What if you had a bar with 20 saw higher up on a hill, and then you had a bar with 20 saw further down on the hill, and there's a little bit of running water in between them? Would that connect them? It does not connect them. And umashke tefeach, and if you have just a slight bit of moisture, ain't a chibur. So if it's not a chibur, so the fact that the half of the hand that he washed is still a little moist shouldn't have any impact on connecting that half to the other half that he's going to wash, because we look at it as if that half that he washed earlier is completely dry. So once again, what is Ilfa's question about washing half your hand and then washing the other half? How could that possibly be good? It's not just a little moist. There's enough water remaining still on half of your hand that if someone touched your hand, he would also get wet. So there's enough moisture to make something else wet. That's also a Mefurish Mishnah, because it says Tefech Latfiach Chibur. That is a Chibur. So, what is the Shaila of Ilfa? You asked me if you even have a stream. So the question is, how much was going from one to the other? But that's a good aura. You have a very good aura. It could be the difference is, not Rashi says the difference is when we're saying mashke tefech is not a chibur, that's even if it's flat. On anything on an incline that's running, we don't consider that connected. But what if it's flat and it's stationary? So you have two little. Let's say I have a keli, right, and then I have two little receptacles in the keli, and there's water in each one, and then there's moisture in between. That's remaining there. It's not going to be flowing in either direction. So that's not a chibur, unless there's more. I'll just being that you brought it up, I'll be might as well learn Rashi because it's a very yesodistic Rashi. Einay chibur, which is the second to the top line in Rashi. You're pouring water from a klitame to a klitar. V'nitzuk and v'nitzuk kaluch mechaber mashke shnei akelim einay chibur. So if you have a nitzuk that's being mechaber to two kelim, that doesn't constitute a chibur to transmit tumah. Latame mashkin al yud. To latame the mashkin on top. The chenek atafres. If there's an incline, in mavir and derech daf hanasuna b'medrin. Let's say you had a board, a pipe that was placed on an incline, v'tachtoinim mechubarim l'tuma, and the lower water are mechubar l'tuma. Ein ha'al yoinim tameim. The upper is not tamei. The chenim haisa a reva arucha. What if it was a flat bowl? Uv'shnei rashel mashkin, and on either end of it there was mashkin. Echad tamei v'chatar u'mashkin tevech mechabram ein chiber l'tamei tahor. So this is no longer on an incline. This is flat. V'chein l'tayr in mikvois. So I believe David asked, how do mikvahs connect? So Rashi points out the chein l'tayr in mikvois. The shnei mikvois She'ein bechad ben arba saw. If you have two mikvahs that neither one is 40 saw, then nitzu v'chatapris u'mashkut v'ech mechabram ein a chibur. There's a long Tosfos that discusses mikvahs, discusses you need kishveferes hanoid, you need about 2-inch round hole, and Tosfos makes a distinction between if you have two boyers that are each 20, that neither one becomes a kosher mikvah, versus if you had three boyers, the top was 20, the bottom was 20, and the middle was 40, will that 40 allow the mikvah to work? So I believe the lower mikvah, we say, is a good mikvah, but not the upper. There's also a lot of discussion in Tosfos of, although you need to have a hole of about 2 inches, which is enough to put two fingers in it to spin them around, you don't necessarily need to have that whole hole full of water. The hole has to be that big, but could be you just need a little bit of water going through. That's a discussion in Tosfos. If it has to be full of water, or if you just need a hole that size, but it doesn't have to be full of water. Okay, so to Gemara weiter. Okay. Now both mikvahs have it full enough that it's not just a tiny little stream of water going over the hole. It's halfway up, So it doesn't have to be, you don't need the shikha the whole time. You only need it for a second. Zok to Gemara, you don't have a raya from that. Because even though Tefech Amunat Latviyah connects two bodies of water, we're not looking to connect two bodies of water. We're looking to say that it was one Natila and not two half Natilas. Zok to Gemara, from there you wouldn't have a raya. Dilma le'inyin makvois. Maybe the shaila that Tefech Latviyah is a chibur, that's Lagabi connecting to mikvois. But that would have no bearing on our shaila, on an ilpa shaila, as if you connect Natila, the earlier Natila with the later Natila. Why would mikvois be different? Because mikvois has a new concept. Rabbi Yehudi Ditnan, mikvah sheyesh boy arbam saw michu vanos. If you had a mikvah that had exactly 40 saw, and v'yardu shnayim v'tavlu, and two people went into toibel, but b'zachazet, first one went in. So as he comes out, he has water all over him. That means when he leaves, this mikveh will no longer have 40 saw. So therefore, the halach is rishon tahor, because he toiveled in a body of water that was 40 saw, but vasheni tamei, because by the time he came, there was no longer 40 saw. But Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, raglav shal rishon noigosh b'mayim, if the feet of the rishon are still in the water, meaning he didn't completely exit the mikveh, we consider all of the water that's on the body of the first toivel as part of the mikveh, and therefore af hasheni tahor. And the reason for this is zokt Rashi mishum gud achis. We look at it like all of the water on the person is in the mikveh. You know why? As Tosfos speaks out, because it's eventually going to drain down into the mikveh. If he would stand there, eventually it would all drain down into the mikveh. So you have a concept of good achis, that water that's above is connected to the water that's below, because it's all headed in that direction. That's a very good svara to explain why there's 40 saw in that mikveh. But how does that make it that just because you washed half a hand, it's somehow connected, and now you have one natila? You don't have that at all. So that was shaila. If you washed half of your hand and then you washed the other half of your hand, would it be a good natila? We look at it like it goes down to the bottom. Anytime something's above, like a mechitza, you look at it like it extends to the bottom. But in this case, there's an extra svara of it's going to eventually drain down anyway. So it's mistaber to say good achas. So Dr. more about it. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, Haray Amar, we said, Habar Roshai Virubai B'mayim She'uvim. The halacha is if someone goes Roshai Virubai B'mayim She'uvim, which means in the olden days of Rashi, the mikvahs that they had weren't as beautiful as the mikvahs that we have nowadays. What they were ma'orais seruchim. They were smelly, dirty ma'orais. So smelly, dirty, and people felt dirty when they toiveled. So right after they toiveled, they would run into the shower, which is not an appropriate thing that everybody does, that they run into the shower after they go to the mikveh. And because of that, Rashi says, the mikveh is not matar. Ela matar is to shower after the mikveh. That's matar you. And because of that, they were afraid people would use showers instead of mikvahs. The gozer alayim. They made a gzeira that if you toivel in such a body of water, you're going to be tamei midrabanan. The shuv gazru, and then they were gozer. So this gzeira was for a tful yoim, for somebody who's actually a tful yoim that could not. So they were gozer that he won't be able to eat truma until he toivels again. But then they expanded the gzeira and they said a tahar that shloisha lugan mayim she'uvin fell on him, he's tamei. So that's worse. First they said if you're at full yoim and you toivel in such a mikveh, you got to toivel again. Then they said even if you're tar and you took a shower, you become tamei. You become tamei, and the reason why they were goyzer even more severely on someone who showered in shloisha lugan mayim she'uvin that he's tamei is because that was more common. So they had to make sure that people wouldn't think that. It's a gzeira because they're afraid people are going to start thinking that that's the mikveh. So they made it tamei. So I don't know where it comes from. In our days, we didn't take a shower after the mikveh. But now most people they go to the shower after the mikveh. What? Everyone runs to the shower after the mikveh. I don't know. But I know that Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach once said that I take a shower before I go to the mikveh, and I also take another shower after I go to the mikveh. Why? The first time I go is I'll cover up riyas, and the second time I go after I went to the mikveh is to be moichi those people who didn't do cover up riyas. Okay, Zok to Gemara weiter. Boy Rabbi Yirmiyah. Rabbi Yirmiyah had a shaila. What happens if chetze bebiyah v'chetze b'nefila? What if you immersed in a what happens if you immersed in water? So what if half of your body you dipped into a body of water that was she'uvin, and the other half of your body you took a shower, and you had 3 lukim? Will that be metamu? In other words, can you piece together 2 different takonis, and will that be metamu? Zok to Gemara teku. Amar Papa, Hare Amru Balkari Choyla. If someone was a Balkari, and we know that there's a Gzeira nowadays, sorry, not nowadays, but there's a Tkalas Ezra, that you're not supposed to learn Torah if you're a Balkari. So what happens if they put on in Tisha Kavin Mayim, he's Tar? In other words, Tisha Kavin is connected to mikveh. Now that doesn't work to be matar him. Midaraisa, it's only going to deal with the special takana of Ezra. We'll see. Let me see the second. The Ezra tikkun tefillah l'valkarian. No, because it's hard for a choila to go into the mikveh. Yeah, the Ezra tikkun tefillah l'valkarian kodim she'asku b'Torah ve'kelu ala choila b'nesinas tisha kavin filu shuvin l'mesechas bracha. It's avalatayra in the context of mikdash, but if he was really tamei, sure you need to toivel on a mikveh. So it's not really mitar you. If you have a problem keeping Tekanos Ezra, so then Tisha Kavin, if you're a chayla, you'd be allowed to do it. I'm not sure. A lot of people there are Saimach on Tisha Kavin. Are we all considered chaylas today? I'm sorry? There's a lot of people who don't go to the mikveh. They just take a shower. You want to know who does that? There are people. Yes. Yeah, there are. Well, the question is if you want to be makbid on Tekanos Ezra, it's a better thing to do. So there's a shaila if it was butler or not, I guess. Okay. So Boya Papa, what happens if you did chetche b'tfila or chetche b'nesina? What if a Balkari went halfway into the mikveh, the other half he used Tisha Kabin? My teku, once again, the more remains with the teku. It's mashma. It's mashma. Half of his body, or actually half of the body went to the mikveh. So it's much of the water, you're using the same amount. It's just that one half of your body did this, one did that. Okay, go back to it. You know that it says in the Gemara somewhere that 10 kavan of Dibur came to the world, and 9 kavan were taken by women, and 1 kav were taken by men. Right? We also have this Tisha kavan that it's you like a mikveh. So on one year Purim, I said over a story, and Rabbi Lowy never appreciated any of my jokes as much as that one. And the story was that during COVID, there was a younger man, and he called his grandfather to say good Shabbos, like he does every Erev Shabbos. And his grandfather is not letting him off the phone. He's yakking and yakking and yakking. He's got to go already. He normally took a 5-minute phone call. He's either wants to take a Shabbos. He's talking. He took a 45-minute phone call. And he's got to go. He has things to prepare. He's got things to do. So he's yakking and yakking and yakking like a lady. So he tells his grandfather, I really, really got to go. So I said, I'm really sorry I kept you so long. But in COVID, I couldn't go to the mikvah. I at least wanted Tisha Kavan. Sagt hele Gemara weiter. Echad oimer b'fani nechta. Ve'echad oimer b'fani nechta. Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Yehuda. This is a little bit of a complex Gemara, so we have to halk up. Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Yehuda. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Loi shanu. This that we said, if one said b'fani nechta and one said b'fani nechta, that it's possible, that's only el'she'ein haget yoytze mitachas yidei shneim. That's if they're not both shluchim. What does it mean yoytze miyad sheim? The machlokes Rashi and Tosfos. So Rashi is a little bit more radical. Rashi says sheshneim adukim boy. They're literally both holding on to it. Tosfos says no, they're both appointed as shluchim. So this only applies if they're not both shluchim. So therefore, the shliach said b'fani nechtam, and the non-shliach said b'fani nechtam, or vice versa. I will get yoytze mitachas yidei shneim. But if the get is coming from both, if they're both shluchim, kosher, it will be kosher if one said b'fani nechtav and one said b'fani nechtav. Alma, you see from here, kasavar shnayim sheviu get didn't say yom ain't shrichen sheyomer b'fani nechtav b'fani nechtav. Since it would be, it's not kosher if one says b'fani nechtav and one says b'fani nechtav if they're not both shluchim. Yet, if they're both shluchim, it is kosher. Why should there be a difference? The only reason why there should be a difference is because if they're both shluchim, they wouldn't have needed to say b'fani nechtav and b'fani nechtav anyway. And therefore, no matter what they say is good, because they don't need to say anything at all. Let's see Rashi. Kosher. Even though they're b'fani nechtav and b'fani nechtav are useless because it's not one person saying both. The lechad atzrechu alamei tevayu. The takana was that one of these two people, the shliach, has to say both. Why did you have to say both? The loylichlefu b'kiyim shtaris the alma. We don't want someone to say b'fani nechtam by himself, because then we'll think that all kiyim shtaris you only need one aid. That's why they made him say b'fani nechtam, so it will be obvious to anybody who sees this that this is different. This is get. It shouldn't apply to dinei mamnis. So let me read Rashi. Rashi is lechad atzrechua. Only if there's one aid is it necessary to say both things. It's still kosher, even though there's two people. You know why? Because you don't even need to say it at all. So if I don't need to say it all, so no matter what they say, it doesn't really matter. Why by two don't you need to say it? The timer, what's the reason Rashi is going according to Rava? Tosfos argues. But Rashi is going according to Rava. The timer, the whole reason why they made this whole takana is because we need Edom L'Kaimai. But if there's two shluchim, they're the Edom. Correct Rashi, because even the soif, Shnaimim, L'maisha, there's two shluchim over here. Mali Shneim shluchim, Mali Echad Mehem. Why are we only allowing and saying that b'fani nechtav is not necessary when you have two shluchim because you have Edom L'Kaimai? What if there's only one shliach, but he brought with him somebody who could be Mekayim to get? So weiter, this shouldn't be a concern because you have two Edom to be Mekayim to get. All right, Edom L'Kaimai. Zok Rashi, it's a loy plug rabbanon bein ba'im chabur shanoshim l'bay chidi. They couldn't start making differences in takanas. That if you're shliach but you came with other people, then we don't make the takana. They couldn't do that. The ein mafkinu baydek be'ela. Who's going to check the group of people that this shliach came with to determine whether or not they could be the kind of chasima? If they're going to start allowing another person who's not a shliach to say v'fani nechdam or v'fani nechtav, we're going to have a problem because sometimes we won't have it. So therefore, they only relax the takana if there's two shluchim. That's milchas of the muchacha, and it's not a common scenario where there's two shluchim, and therefore achmur baraban, and there the rabbanan didn't mandate that you say b'fani nechtam, and therefore even if one said b'fani nechtam and the other said b'fani nechtam, it would be a kosher or a get because it didn't need to say anything at all. Amalei Abaye, Zakta, so if that's the case, in later on in the Mishnah says, Shnaim Oimrim b'fanenu nechtam, v'echad Oimer b'fani nechtam. Possible, it's going to be possible. So the question is, and Rabbi Yehuda said on that halacha, Rabbi Yehuda machshir. Rabbi Yehuda allowed if the shliach, it seems like two edim said b'fanenu nechtam, and the shliach said b'fani nechtam. So Rabbi Yehuda machshir and Rabbi Yehuda allows it. Haima, the ein haget yoytze mitachas yidei shneim. The way you're understanding that if they all brought the get, if they're all shluchim, anything goes because nothing is required, it must be that the rabbanan over here who said it's possible must be that the shliach of the get is not all three people. Only one of these three people is the shliach on the get. Haget yoyte mitachas yidei shneim. If all of these people were shluchim, machshiri rabbanan. Would the rabbanan be matter based on what you're saying? He said, yeah, exactly. If they were all shluchim, it would be kosher. So the way you're learning the Mishnah, the get is not, they're not all shluchim on the get. So b'mai pligi, exactly, why is it that Rabbi Yehuda allows it? The problem is, they need to say b'fani nechtam, and they're not saying it properly because you don't have one person saying both. So how is it that Rabbi Yehuda accepts this get? Dr. Gemara Mar Savar Gazrina. Dilma Asil Lachlufe Bekim Shtaris to Alma. The Tanakama holds that this is a concern that you're going to confuse it with Kim Shtaris to Alma because there's only one aid here saying b'fani nechtam, even though there's other stuff going on, but this person specifically that said b'fani nechtam, who's being mekayim de chasima, he didn't say anything else. So we're afraid that by other stars you would allow that as well as a kiyum, and we all know kiyum stars need to aid him. But Umar Tavar, but Rabbi Yehuda holds loy gazrinon. We're not gozer. Why not? Because the fact of the matter is, in this maimed, someone did say b'fani nechtam, so it won't get mixed up with kiyum stars. So that's the machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim. If in this maimed they did say b'fani nechtam, it just wasn't that same shliach that said it, would that be confused with kiyum stars? That was one way that this Gemara went down. Lish nachrina, but there was another approach to this whole Gemara, and this is how it went down. Amri la Amar Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda Amar Rabbi Yochanan afilu get yoytze mitachas yidei shneim pasul. Even if they're all shluchim, it's still pasul if one said b'fani nechtav and the other one said b'fani nechtam, it would still be pasul. Why is pasul? We know why. But the chiddush is that the takana of b'fani nechtam is also said. The requirement is even there if there's two shluchim. Alma gazaver shnaim sheviu get when we didn't say yom trichin sheyoimru b'fanenu nechtav u'b'fanenu nechtav. So it's taking the completely opposite position from the first lashon. Amar le'Abaye. So we still want to figure out how it follows through in the other cases of the Mishnah. Elamiyat sefer the katani shnaim oimrim b'fanenu nechtav v'yechad oimrim b'fanenu nechtam. The Chachamim said it's possible for Rabbi Yehuda machshir, and we're saying it's afilu get yoytze mitachas yidei shnei and pasli rabbanon. Basically, what you're saying is even if they're all shluchim, the rabbanon are still going to passel because we're going according to the lashon that even if two people bring a get, the takana requiring b'fani nechtav and b'fani nechtam is still there. Amar le'in. So of course he answered yes. That's exactly what I'm saying. So b'ma'ikabibli, once again, why would Rabbi Yehuda be machshir? Zokamar Mar Savar Levisha Ein B'Kiyim Lishma. The Tanakama who holds that it doesn't work holds that the reason for the takana is because Ein B'Kiyim Lishma. So even though you have multiple people bringing the get, and therefore there's no problem, there's no concern of kiyum, but we still need the b'fani nechtav because of the lishma. Umar Savar Rabbi Yehuda holds the whole reason is Levisha Ein Edim Mitzuyin L'Kaimai. And that reason is not relevant here because you have multiple edim that could be Mekayim Shtar. So the problem is, we're now saying that there's a Machlokes Tanoim about the reason for the Takana. Is it because Ein B'Kiyim L'Shema, or is it Ein Edim Mitzuyin L'Kaimai? We know from the very beginning of the Masechta that this is the Machlokes Rav and Rabba. So you're going to tell me now that Rav and Rabba is Tali in Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanon? Lema de Rava Rabba Tanoi? Nobody wants to say that. So Kumar Loi. Rava Mitaretz Kalish Nakama. Rava will learn like Kalish Nakama. And therefore, he doesn't have to have this problem of Ebeki and Lishma to mandate that if two shluchim brought the get, you still have to say B'fani Nechtam. Rava will learn completely like Kalish Nakama, that if two people bring the get, it's pashut that you don't need to say B'fani Nechtam or B'fani Nechtam. And the whole shaila of our Mishnah is when they weren't both shluchim. So Rava fits in beautifully, Sai according to Rabbi Yehuda, Sai according to the Rabbanon, and the machlokes is whether or not your geyser atu shtaros to alma. The Rabba Amarlach, and Rabba will say, the chula alma b'inu l'shma. Both Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanon agree that you need l'shma. L'hacha b'mayaskinon la'achar shalom du. The shaila in our Mishnah, why Rabbi Yehuda does not require the b'fani nechtav, why Rabbi Yehuda holds that if two people said the funny nechtam and a third guy said the funny nechtam, why would that be good? It's because it's la'achar shalom du, and you no longer have to deal with the problem of l'shma. Uvigzeira shema yachzer adavar l'kalkula kamiviti. The whole machlokes is: are we worried that we still need to keep up the takana of l'shma? Because if not, and things turn for the worse, then we'll have problems. The Mar Sabar Gazrinon, the Tanakama holds Gazrinon, and therefore, if you have one aid who said the Fani Nechtam, and the other aid said the Fani Nechtam, or if you have two aidim that said the Fani Nechtam, and one aid said the Fani Nechtam, it's still going to be a problem because you don't have the proper aidus of Lishma. If you're going to say you don't need it, you don't have the proper aidus of Lishma, and therefore, if you need it, you have to be Geyser. And therefore, you don't need any more the B'fani Nechtav at all, and for Kiyam alone, it's enough that you have multiple aids. Correct the Gemara, based on this explanation, the Liflig Nami Rabbi Yehuda Bereisha. Rabbi Yehuda only argues in the case where there were two Eidim who said B'fani Nechtav and one Eid who said B'fani Nechtav. But what about the earlier case, where only one Eid said B'fani Nechtav and the other Eid said B'fani Nechtav? According to Rabbi Yehuda, you have two Eidim here. So why should I need to say B'fani Nechtav? We already said earlier, right away at the beginning of the parak, right after the Mishnah, we already said, Rabbi Yehuda is arguing in two cases of the Mishnah. He's arguing in a case where two Eidim came, two Shluchim came, one said B'fani Nechtav and the other said B'fani Nechtav, and he argues in the case of where three people came and two said B'fani Nechtav and one said B'fani Nechtav, because once again, Rabbi Yehuda holds that it's only al kiyum, and if you have three people, you don't need kiyum. I mean, we could have asked this earlier on. That's a beautiful, beautiful kasha. And if we look at Tosfos, Tosfos will tell us further up. Tosfos tells us. Tosfos says the Gemara could have asked us earlier as well. Here it is. So this kasha is relevant the whole time. It's relevant no matter what. Okay, gewaltig. Okay, let me see the Gemara weiter. So I'm not sure if this, no, this. Let me see what Tosfos is saying over here. No, I'm sorry. So this is referring to the Seifa. Hashav and the Gemara only asked it later. So you want to know in the first lashon why we didn't ask it, right? So let me see in the first lashon, why didn't the Gemara say it? I'm not sure. Because Pashtus it would be Nageya. Pashtus it would be Nageya in the first lashon as well. Because Mimolashech Rabbi Yehuda is actually arguing in both cases. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure because in either case the Rabban holds apostle and we don't do mutter. I don't know. Good order. Let's see the Gemara weiter. Because we're not out of the weeds yet. Moshe Rabbi Ula. Oishia asked Ula the following question: Rabbi Yehuda machshir b'zu v'loy b'acheres. It says Rabbi Yehuda machshir b'zu. So b'zu is mashma that he's only arguing on this case, but not on an earlier case. My love, lemute echadoimer b'fani nechtav ve'echadoimer b'fani nechtav. So why are you saying that Rabbi Yehuda argues aparishayna? If you look at Rabbi Yehuda's words, he seems to be very specific. Machshir b'zu, unay two edim to say b'fani nechtav. But if there's only one eid to say b'fani nechtav, maybe he wouldn't be matir. Dr. Merloi, the bezu is not coming to exclude when there's only one eid saying b'fani nechtav. Rather, it's l'mute b'fani nechtam, avaloi b'fani nechtav. It's being memait in a case where the aid said b'fani nechtam, but the aid didn't say b'fani nechtam. There, for sure, it's possible. So the question is, why do I need Rabbi Yehuda to specify that if the aid didn't say b'fani nechtam at all, that it's going to be possible? That's possible that it's possible. Would Rabbi Yehuda need to tell us that? Yes, I could have possibly thought that if a shliach only said b'fani nechtam and not b'fani nechtam, it would be good. Why? It's speaking in a case where it was Gomru. People know the halacha now. People know that it has to be Lashma. So technically, right now, it's not relevant to say b'fani nechtam. So you would have thought that maybe Rabbi Yehuda is Geyser Shema Yachshad Avlikol Kulai, and therefore, even though now you don't need the b'fani nechtam Lashma anymore, but it'll still be Geyser that you have to continue saying b'fani nechtam in case things deteriorate. Zok to Gemara, v'legazer Rabbi Yehuda Gzeir Shema Yachshad Avlikol Kulai, and then Dilma Asi Lechlufe B'Kiyim Shtaris to Alma Beid Echad Nami Loy Gazar. So first of all, you might have thought, Hoyel v'loy gazer Rabbi Yehuda Gzeir Shema Yachshar Davar L'Kol Kulai. Since Rabbi Yehuda is not gazer Shema Yachshar Davar L'Kol Kulai, you might also extend his kula a step further and say Dilma Asi Lechluve B'Kim Shtaris to Alma Beid Echad Nami Loy Gazar. Maybe now that you don't need Lishma anymore, maybe he'll hold that if you did normally need Lishma, and now you don't need Lishma, we don't have the Gzeira at all of Achluve B'Kim Shtaris. Remember, who really needed the Gzeira of Achluve B'Kim Shtaris? It was only Rava who needed it. You know why? Because for Kim Shtaris, you don't need the Fani Nechtav at all. The only reason why, according to Rava, we stuck in the Fani Nechtav is because it could be confused with Kim Shtaris. But according to Rabbi, the reason why you say B'fani Nechtav is because of Lishma. So if there's no need anymore to say B'fani Nechtav because of Lishma, maybe he doesn't hold of the Achluv B'Kim Shtaris, because he never required B'fani Nechtav because of Achluv B'Kim Shtaris. He only needed B'fani Nechtav because of the Lishma problem. So therefore, maybe he wouldn't be Geyser. Kamash Malon, that he would still be Geyser. Even if you hold as an Indian of Lishma, there's still a concern of Asal Achluv B'Kim Shtaris, and therefore, you always have to say B'fani Nechtav, and if you didn't say B'fani Nechtav, it would be possible. Dr. Gemara Baiter. Itmanami, and we even have a raya to this halacha. And Rashi says the specific halacha that we're trying to bring a raya to is Kelishna Basra. We're trying to bring a raya to the second lashon that even if there's two shluchim, they still have to say B'fani Nechtav or B'fani Nechtav. Itmanami Amar B'Yehuda Shnayim Sheviu Get. So clearly they're both shluchim. Mimedina Sayom, from Medina Sayom. Banu l'machlokas Rabbi Yehuda v'Rabbanan. So you see the machlokas Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan, where the Rabbanan passes is even in a case where they're both shluchim, which is consistent with the second lashon and inconsistent with the first one. Zok the Gemara weiter. Rabbi Bar Bar Chana cholash. Rabbi Bar Bar Chana was not well. Oil ligabei Rabbi Yehuda v'Rabba l'shiyulei bei. So Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi went to see how he was doing. So what do you do by a gadol b'Yisrael when you want to see how he's doing? You shmuz and learning ba'im, which there's videos that were put out from from Gershon Edelstein that mamish the day he died in the hospital in ICU, I think he was saying shiurim. Unbelievable. So that's what they do. I'm sorry. Oh, he didn't say it. So boy minay shnayim sheviu get from b'din sayom. If both are shluchim that brought a get from b'din sayom, shrichen sheyarmu b'fanenu nechtav u'b'fanenu nechtav. Oh, ain't shrichen. So this is mamish the shaila that we had, but I guess he wasn't in the besmedrash, so he didn't hear the discussion that we just learned. So they asked him, do they have to say b'fanenu nechtav u'b'fanenu nechtav? Oh, ain't shrichen. Amalam ain't shrichen. They don't have to say. Why not? Ma ilu yarmu b'fanenu gisha. They have a migoy. They could have came, not even brought a get at all, and they could have said, we witnessed that this woman got a get. We witnessed her husband gave a get. And she would be free. Milay Mehemni, they would be believed. So therefore, they're also believed over here as well, and they don't have to say, which is like our first lashon. Adahachi, in the meantime, Osahu Gavra, some low-life Persian anti-Semite who wants to bother Yidden came, and Shakla l'shraga mikamayu. He took their light. And there was a rule that on the days that they had for their avodah zaros, they had a Yom Tov, so they used to light, maybe Katzma lights. No Yid was allowed to have any light anywhere. The only place where light would be allowed would be the base of avodah zarah. So he never had his little lamp that he wanted to learn with, and the Persian behemoth came and stopped it away. So now it's dark. So Ula was So Rabbi Bechana was feeling bad. So he said, as at tefillah, he gave a krech to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Amar Rachmana, Rebbeinu Shalom. It's like other lagzich, other baigzich, right? He said, "Oi be tulach, either betulach means sail. Either shade us, either Rebbeinu Shalom take us under your shade, under your cover, and protect us. Oi betula de bar Esav, or let us be under the brutal rule of the Romans rather than of the Persians." Right? Are you telling me that the rule when they were under the Romans it was better for them than under the Persians? My Rebbe understands our way, and he knows our place. And we darshan they can't handle the brutality of the Xeris of the Romans, so therefore So therefore Hashem made us go to Golos to have to deal with the Persians. So that's mashma that the Persians are better. Yet here, Rabbi Bar Chana is asking to put us under the Romans instead of the Persians. Bavel was the Persians. They're worse. Before the Talmidei Chachamim came to Bavel, then the Persians weren't so bad. But when the Talmidei Chachamim got to Bavel, Zok Rashi, the boss of the Bavel, that's when it got very, very bad. When it got very, very bad, that's when it was. So this was at a time where the Persians were even worse than the Romans. But there was a time where the Persians weren't as bad as the Romans. Okay, we'll stop here, and the Bezim will be Mamshech tomorrow. I thought it means the Talmidei Chachamim. What did the ArtScroll say? About when Chavri came to Bavel.
It means the Persians.
Oh, it means the Persians. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the Zoroastrians. These are Zoroastrians.
1 second. Okay. Oh, sorry. I mean the Persians. So when the Persians were not above, they weren't so bad. When they came to above, they got worse. So shkoich for correcting me. That was a bad mistake. So when the Persians came to Babel, they made a more. I guess they had an ego. Once they took over, they started getting very, very brutal. Okay, gewaltig. Shkoich, everybody. Shkoich Chaim.